Her world stopped the moment she saw it. Her paralyzed twins moving, responding, living, all because of a janitor who shouldn't have even known their names. Hi, my beautiful family. Thank you for sticking around with me through our trying times. I really appreciate your love and support. We're finally back again to give you many more beautiful stories. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, let us begin. A cold dawn spread across the skyline as Ariana Vale, one of the most powerful businesswomen in the country, sat trembling behind the wheel of her car. The tinted windows of her black SUV hid the shaking in her hands, the sheen of tears on her lashes, and the exhaustion carved beneath her eyes. She wasn't crying because she was weak. She was crying because she was tired of being strong. Her twins, her only children, had been born with a rare neurological condition that left them unable to move their limbs or speak. 6 years of therapy, surgeries, specialists, and hope that always ended in disappointment had drained her in a way no hostile takeover ever had. Today was another appointment, another evaluation, another chance to hear a doctor say, "There's been no improvement." Her world stopped the moment she saw it. Her paralyzed twins moving, responding, living, all because of a janitor who shouldn't have even known their names. Hi, my beautiful family. Thank you for sticking around with me through our trying times. I really appreciate your love and support. We're finally back again to give you many more beautiful stories. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, let us begin. A cold dawn spread across the skyline as Ariana Vale, one of the most powerful businesswomen in the country, sat trembling behind the wheel of her car. The tinted windows of her black SUV hid the shaking in her hands, the sheen of tears on her lashes, and the exhaustion carved beneath her eyes. She wasn't crying because she was weak. She was crying because she was tired of being strong. Her twins, her only children, had been born with a rare neurological condition that left them unable to move their limbs or speak. 6 years of therapy, surgeries, specialists, and hope that always ended in disappointment had drained her in a way no hostile takeover ever had. Today was another appointment, another evaluation, another chance to hear a doctor say, "There's been no improvement." She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel and whispered, "Please, please let today be different." A small reflection in the rearview mirror caught her attention. 2 tiny heads, leaning slightly in their specialized car seats. Nora and Thane, beautiful, fragile, alive, but locked in silence. Ariana inhaled shakily, wiped her tears, and forced herself back together. Because billionaires don't fall apart. Mothers do, but no one sees that part of her. On the other side of the sprawling therapy center grounds, Elias Rook pushed his mop bucket across the polished hallway floors, keeping his head down the way everyone expected from a janitor. The early morning lights cast long shadows across the corridor, and Elias's boots squeaked on the tiles as he worked methodically. He hummed under his breath, a soft, warm sound that echoed lightly. It was a heartbreaking contrast to his appearance. Tall, broad-shouldered, handsome in a rugged way that made nurses glance twice. But his eyes carried stories he never told. Most staff didn't know what to make of him. A man who looked like that working a minimum wage cleaning job? Rumors flew. A criminal record? A debt? A bad divorce? A disgraced veteran? No one ever guessed the truth. He paused when he passed the therapy observation window and saw two small figures lying quietly on padded mats. The twins. He cleaned this area every morning, and every morning something inside his chest tugged painfully when he saw them. Nora, dark curls and big eyelashes. Thane, light hair and soft, solemn eyes. He whispered, "Morning, little warriors," before continuing his shift. He thought no one heard him. He was wrong. Inside the therapy lobby, Ariana adjusted Thane's head support as the occupational therapist greeted her with a sympathetic smile. "Good morning, Ms. Vale. Long drive?" Ariana nodded. Traffic. Lie. It was the crying. As they entered the therapy wing, she brushed her fingers lightly across Nora's cheek. "You're safe, sweet girl. Mommy's right here." Her voice softened in a way it never did in boardrooms. The therapist began discussing new exercises. Ariana listened, but her mind drifted. Worry, guilt, loneliness, all swirling inside her like a storm she couldn't escape. A clipboard clattered somewhere down the hall. Ariana glanced up, and her eyes briefly caught Elias as he bent to pick it up. A janitor. But something about his gentleness of his movements, or the quiet warmth in his eyes, made her chest tighten in a confusing way. She quickly looked away. Her life had no room for distractions. Definitely not a handsome janitor. Still, she felt the faintest irrational flutter inside her ribcage. As Ariana and the twins were guided into the therapy room, Elias continued cleaning nearby. He kept his head down, but listened to the rhythm of small sounds, breathing, shifting, the soft beeps of equipment. Then he heard it, a faint whimper. He turned slightly and peered through the doorway. Nora's fingers twitched, barely, but undeniably. Thane's eyes tracked something on the ceiling. Elias's breath caught. "Hey," he whispered, barely audible. "You two are awake today. Good." He wasn't supposed to interact. It wasn't his job. But something in him recognized that small sound, a sound he once lived with, a sound of wanting so much to speak, but having no way to do it. He stepped back before anyone saw him. When the therapist stepped out to grab equipment, Ariana knelt beside her children, brushing their small hands. "I'm sorry for everything I couldn't fix. If love was enough, you'd both be running around this room." Nora's eyes blinked. Thane's fingers curled. Ariana froze. Was it reflex? Coincidence? Hope lying to her again? Her heart stumbled in her chest. She didn't know this was only the beginning. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that their silence hurt more than any words they could say? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might help someone else watching today.
Therapy rooms always smelled faintly of disinfectant and lemon wipes. But today, beneath the sterile scent, Ariana sensed something else. Something warm, human, alive. She placed Nora gently onto a padded mat while the therapist prepared equipment. Thane lay beside his sister, his eyes following the faint shadows cast by the overhead lights. "All right, Miss Vale," the therapist said, typing on her tablet. "We'll begin with passive mobility exercises." A soft sound interrupted her. The therapist didn't notice, but Ariana did. A breath, a tiny vocal flutter. Her whole body went cold and hot at the same time. "Nora?" Ariana whispered. Nothing. Silence again. She almost convinced herself she imagined it. Almost. Down the hall, Elias rolled his cart toward the elevator. He shouldn't have heard anything from this distance, yet something in him prickled, a strange instinct he couldn't explain. He paused, hand on the elevator button. A faint sound drifted from Nora and Thane's room, a sound he recognized with total clarity. Not speech, not a cry, but an attempt. He abandoned the elevator and walked back, each step slow, purposeful, as if pulled by invisible threads. When he reached the doorway, he stopped. He didn't enter. He just watched. The therapist placed a small stuffed bear beside the twins, a bright yellow one used for eye-tracking practice. Usually, neither twin reacted. They stared blankly or blinked aimlessly, lost in silence. But today, Thane's hand twitched. Not a spasm. A reach. Slow, shaking, intentional. The therapist froze mid-motion. Ariana gasped, hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God," Ariana whispered. "Thane, baby, are you—" Thane's fingers stretched again, toward the bear. Ariana burst into tears without sound, her knees weakening beneath her. Nora blinked rapidly, then made the same breathy flutter Ariana heard before. "Is this—" the therapist stammered. This isn't typical. I've never—" Her voice faded, overwhelmed. Elias should have stayed at the door. He knew he should have. But when Thane's hand tremored and fell short of the toy, Elias couldn't stand it. He stepped quietly inside. "Hey, little man," he said gently, kneeling beside the mat. "You got this." Ariana spun around, eyes wide. "What are you doing here?" The therapist quickly said, "Sir, you can't—" But Elias wasn't touching the twins. He wasn't interfering with equipment. He was simply present. And somehow the room felt different with him in it. Elias kept his eyes on Thane. "Breathe, buddy. Focus on the yellow bear." Thane's fingers curled again, reaching, trying, and then his hand touched the bear. Ariana gasped so sharply she choked on air. Her therapist covered her mouth with trembling fingers. Nora let out a soft, airy sound, almost like a giggle. Ariana dropped to her knees beside Elias, tears streaming openly. How are they doing this?" she whispered. Elias didn't look at her. He couldn't. He might break if he did. "I don't know," he said softly, "but they've been trying for a long time. I think today it just came through." "Trying? They never respond at home. Not like this." Elias swallowed hard. "They try with me." The room froze. The therapist narrowed her eyes slightly. "What do you mean? You shouldn't be interacting with patients." Elias shook his head. "I don't interact with them, not the way you think. I just talk to them while I'm cleaning. Say good morning. Tell them they're brave. Sometimes Nora looks at me like she understands. Sometimes Thane moves his eyes like he's answering." Ariana stared at him as though seeing him for the first time. "You talk to them," she whispered. "Every day." Her lips parted, a trembling breath escaping. Because in 6 years, no one, not a single therapist, doctor, or specialist, had ever said her children were trying. Elias leaned forward slightly, voice softer than a breeze. "Nora, Thane, you want to show your mom you're here with her?" Nora's fingers twitched. Thane let out a soft, airy sound. Ariana burst into tears openly, covering her face. They're communicating," she cried. "I can't believe—" The therapist lowered her tablet, tears filling her eyes. "Miss Vale, I have no explanation for this." Elias kept whispering encouragements, calm, slow, rhythmic, almost musical. Nora and Thane responded with tiny movements, not miracles, not full mobility, but intentional. For children who had never shown purposeful movement, it was earth-shattering. Ariana reached out, touching Thane's cheek with trembling fingers. "My little boy, I knew you were still in there," she whispered. "I knew it." His eyes shifted toward her, deliberately. Ariana broke, her composure shattered in a way she'd never allow in public. She turned to Elias, this janitor she barely knew, and whispered through tears, "What did you do to them?" Elias shook his head desperately. I didn't fix them. I just saw them." The therapist excused herself to get neurologic test equipment, saying, "This is significant. I need to document everything." She left the room, closing the door quietly behind her. Now it was just Ariana, Elias, and the twins. Silence fell. Not empty silence, charged silence. Ariana wiped her face, trying to calm her breathing. "You've been talking to my children," she said softly. "Every day?" "Yeah, they were lonely." "And I wasn't enough?" "You're their mother," Elias said gently, finally meeting her eyes. "You're everything, but sometimes kids hear different things from different voices." There was no judgment in his tone, only compassion. Ariana didn't know whether to cry harder or thank him. Ariana studied his face, gentle, rugged, familiar in the strangest way. "Why do you care so much?" she whispered. Elias hesitated, a long, heavy hesitation. Then, "I had a little sister once. She couldn't speak either." Ariana's chest clenched painfully. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded, not explaining further, not needing to. For the first time, Ariana saw something behind his quiet smile, grief that hadn't healed. Do you believe some people are meant to enter our lives at the exact moment we need them most? Tell us in the comments if you've ever met someone who changed your life unexpectedly.
Fear creeps in. For a long, breathless moment, the miracle held the room together like glass, fragile, shimmering, impossible. Then, fear cracked through it. Ariana wiped her face and stood, professionalism snapping back into her posture like armor. She wasn't Ariana the mother anymore. She was Ariana Vale, billionaire, strategist, protector. Whatever just happened," she said tightly, "we need to be cautious. It might be temporary. A one-time reaction. I can't let myself hope too fast." Elias nodded, but something flickered in his expression. A quiet ache. "I get it," he said. "Hope can hurt more than the truth." Ariana hesitated. She didn't want to admit that it was true. The therapist returned with equipment, breathless, excited, already talking about neurological responses and documentation. As she conducted tests, Elias stood by the wall, hands clasped behind him, retreating into the shadows the way he always did. He shouldn't have been in the room. He shouldn't have knelt beside those children. He shouldn't have let his heart open like that. And absolutely, he shouldn't have let Ariana look at him as if he mattered. He began edging toward the door. Ariana noticed instantly. "You're leaving?" she asked, voice caught between surprise and something that almost sounded like disappointment. Elias shrugged awkwardly. "The therapists can take it from here. They know what they're doing." Her mouth tightened as if she wanted to argue, but instead she only nodded stiffly. "Thank you," she said, eyes avoiding his. He hated how much that simple thank you hurt. Nora let out another soft, airy giggle, the second sound she'd ever made in her life. Thane flexed his fingers, a tiny tremor of effort. Both children looked, searched for Elias. Ariana noticed, and she froze, because she didn't want it to be true. She didn't want her children's first connection, their first spark of progress, to be with someone who wasn't her. Her jaw clenched. Her voice turned cold. Let's let the specialists finish their work. We need to separate emotion from data. Elias nodded slowly. Of course. Of course, that's what she'd say. He pushed his cleaning cart down the hall, forcing himself not to look back. But he didn't see Thane's hand reaching after him, or Nora's eyes filling with confusion. After the tests, Ariana gathered her twins, buckled them into their chairs, and paced back and forth in the therapy room, trying to make sense of everything. Her thoughts were loud. What if this is just a fluke? What if I let myself believe again, only to be crushed? What if Elias has nothing to do with it, and I'm just desperate for answers? She raked a hand through her hair. He was a janitor, that's it. Not a therapist, not a miracle worker. And yet, her children responded to him, instantly, instinctively, with a trust they'd never shown anyone else. It scared her more than anything ever had. In the supply closet, Elias sat on an overturned bucket, elbows on his knees, head bowed. He couldn't shake the image of Thane reaching for him, or Nora's breathy giggle. "You're getting too close," he whispered to himself. "You said you wouldn't get attached again." But how could he not? How could he ignore two children who reminded him so sharply of his little sister Leela? Leela, who once had giggled the same way. Leela, who once had reached for him. Leela, who he couldn't save. His chest tightened painfully. He wasn't supposed to feel this connection. Not again. Not ever. By midday, whispers traveled through the therapy center. The janitor was in the room? They actually responded to him? That's unprofessional. Does Ms. Vale know? She'll sue the facility. Is he dangerous? One of the administrators pulled Elias aside. "You need to stick to cleaning," she said sharply. "Do not talk to the children. Do not enter therapy rooms. This is your final warning." Elias nodded, jaw clenched. He didn't argue. He never argued. But inside something simmered. Anger, hurt, and something else he dared not name. When Ariana stepped out of the therapy room, drained and overwhelmed, Elias was pushing his cart past her. They nearly collided. "Oh, sorry," she murmured automatically. "Sorry," he echoed. Then silence. Thick, awkward, loaded. Ariana's throat tightened. "Earlier, I didn't mean to dismiss what you did." "You didn't," Elias said quickly. "You just want answers." She nodded, relieved by his understanding, yet somehow more unsettled than before. "But I think it's best if we keep things professional. The therapists are documenting everything. We don't want confusion." Elias stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Yeah, professional. Of course." She swallowed hard. It felt wrong, but she didn't know why. That afternoon, the therapists attempted more exercises with Nora and Thane, without Elias. This time, the twins barely responded. Nora's gaze floated aimlessly. Thane's hand, once so determined, lay limp beside him. Ariana's chest constricted. No, come on, sweethearts," she whispered desperately. "You did it this morning. You can do it again." But their eyes didn't follow her voice the way they followed Elias's. Their movements were weaker, their breaths shallower, almost as if a light had gone out. Ariana's fear rose inside her. Had she pushed away the one thing her children connected with? Elias locked himself in the janitor's closet again. Ariana locked her feelings behind her executive mask. Both pretended it didn't matter. But neither could forget the spark they witnessed. Neither could forget the warmth in that room. Neither could forget how the children came alive in a way they'd never before. And now, that spark flickered dangerously, threatening to die out. If they kept their distance, the miracle might disappear. But neither of them was ready to admit that the miracle needed both of them. Not yet.
The next morning, the mansion was unnaturally quiet. Dr. Leora arrived early, determined to observe Mateo without interference. She slipped into the therapy wing and positioned herself behind the half-closed door of the twins' room, clipboard in hand, breath held. Inside, Mateo was already there, not cleaning, not sweeping, just sitting on the softly padded floor between the twins, as if he had every right to be. No equipment, no medical devices, just a small wooden toy, something handmade, simple, painted with fading colors. He lifted it slowly, letting the morning light hit it, and then Amina's hand twitched, a single, tiny movement. But to a trained specialist like Dr. Leora, it was an earthquake. Mateo didn't react with shock. He smiled, warm, patient, knowing. "It's okay, princess. Try again," he whispered. Amina did. Her fingers stretched, just slightly, but intentionally. Then Noah responded too, his eyelids blinking fast, cheeks tensing as if he were trying to smile. Dr. Leora nearly dropped her clipboard. She stepped inside without meaning to, and Mateo startled, turning sharply. "Oh, sorry, I didn't know anyone was here." But she ignored him, rushing toward the twins. "Do it again," she whispered to Amina, nearly trembling. "Show me what you did." Amina tried, her hand shaking, harder this time. Noah let out a tiny sound, not a voice, more like a breath with shape, a vowel, a beginning. Dr. Leora covered her mouth. This wasn't possible, not without intervention, not without months of prepared therapy. Unless... She snapped her gaze to Mateo. "What exactly are you doing with them?" He froze, caught, eyes dropping, shoulders stiffening. "I'm not doing anything," he said quietly. "I'm just talking to them, listening." "That's not possible," she said. "Listening doesn't create neuromuscular responses. They're showing signs of regained motor control. That takes..." She stopped herself. Mateo wasn't intimidated. Instead, he looked strangely sad. Doctors talk at them, but no one ever talked to them. The words landed like a truth she didn't know how to handle. Dr. Leora's voice softened. What do they do when you're with them?" Mateo hesitated, then held up the little wooden toy. "My brother made this. Before he passed. He used it in speech therapy with kids like them. He believed every child speaks. Some just use a different door." Dr. Leora stared. The twins were responding to him, to his method, to something no degree or machine could replicate. And that terrified her. Because if the billionaire mother discovered this, her job, her authority, her reputation, all of it could crumble. Amina let out a soft breath. Noah reached toward the toy again. Dr. Leora exhaled shakily. Stepping back. "Mateo, don't tell their mother about this yet." Mateo frowned. "Why?" But she was already leaving. because she needed time to figure out whether this was a miracle or the beginning of a disaster she couldn't control.
The billionaire, Elara Voss, arrived unannounced. No entourage, no warnings, no calls ahead. Just the sharp click of her heels echoing through the marble corridor, cold, restless, angry. She had spent the entire night awake, replaying the image of the twins reaching for Matteo, replaying the spark she swore she saw. Hope was dangerous for a mother like her. It ruined you if you were wrong. She barged straight into the therapy wing. Dr. Leora nearly jumped out of her skin when she saw her. "Miss Voss, you're early. I wasn't Where are my children?" Elara demanded, brushing past her. Leora tried to block her. "They're in session. I don't think you should—" But Elara was already pushing open the door. And everything inside the room froze. Matteo sat cross-legged on the padded floor again, Amina leaning against his knee, eyes bright, following his every movement, and little Noah gripping Matteo's shirt as if afraid he'd leave. It was the most alive she had ever seen them, and it stabbed her straight through the heart. What is happening here? Matteo stiffened, instantly standing to his feet. He looked guilty, scared, like he wasn't supposed to be there. I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to overstep." A small sound cut him off. A tiny, soft vocalization. Noah. The boy tried to speak. A shaky breath. A consonant buried inside a gasp. Elara's eyes filled with tears so fast she couldn't blink them away. "Noah? Baby? Did you just try to talk to me?" Noah blinked rapidly. Another sign Dr. Leora had told her to look for, and reached toward Matteo. She saw it, the way her son sought the janitor, the comfort, the trust. Something inside her twisted. Not in jealousy, not in anger, but in grief. Why wasn't she the one who could do this? Why had every specialist failed except the man paid to mop her floors? She looked up at Matteo, voice trembling. How did you do this? They've never reacted like this. Ever. Matteo swallowed. Dr. Leora hovered at the door, panicked but silent. I didn't do anything special. I just listened. He kneels and picks up the small wooden toy again. A simple thing, worn, faded, but in the twins' eyes, it was magic. Amina reached for it, fingers moving with more control than Elara had ever seen. Tears rolled freely down her cheeks. Oh my God. My babies. You're waking up. She turned back to Matteo. Stay with them? It wasn't a question. It was an order, a plea, an emotional surrender. But Dr. Leora stepped forward sharply. Miss Voss, we have protocols. He is not qualified to conduct therapy. If this goes wrong, it could set them back months. Elara silenced her with a single raised hand. My children responded to him, she said, voice icy. Not to machines, not to charts, not to your protocols. Dr. Leora's mouth fell open. Elara, please, this is dangerous. Dangerous? Elara looked at the twins again.
watching her son lift his head toward the toy. She exhaled, breath trembling. Matteo stays. Dr. Leora paled, furious and terrified. Matteo looked stunned. He didn't ask for this. He didn't expect it. He didn't even seem to want credit. But the twins, they were smiling now. Not perfectly, not fully, but unmistakably. And Ilara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, living, breathing hope.
For the rest of the week, Matteo became a fixture in the therapy room. Not officially, not on any chart, not in any of Dr. Leora's carefully curated reports. But the twins wanted him, needed him. Amina's fingers grew steadier each day. Noah's attempts at sound grew stronger. Their eyes were brighter, following movement with astonishing clarity. Ilara watched every session from a corner chair, hands trembling, heart breaking and healing at the same time. But something else was happening too. Jealousy. Not from her, from Dr. Leora. Every improvement the twins showed was a threat to her career, her reputation, her entire identity as the world-renowned neurodevelopmental specialist. She began hovering over Matteo like a storm cloud. "You're holding the toy incorrectly," she snapped one afternoon. Matteo stayed gentle. "It's not about how I hold it. It's about how they react. You're overstimulating them. They're smiling. That's a reflex." Matteo didn't argue. He never argued. But he also never backed away. He kneeled between the twins again, tapping the wooden toy lightly against the mat. Amina giggled, a tiny sound, soft but unmistakable. Ilara's eyes filled instantly. Dr. Leora's face hardened. The session ended. Ilara took the twins for feeding. Matteo excused himself quietly, and Dr. Leora followed him out. In the hallway, "Where did you learn those techniques?" she demanded, grabbing his arm. Matteo blinked, startled. "I told you, my brother used to—" "No." Her voice was sharp, accusing. "You're not trained, you're not licensed, you don't have certification. So how are you doing this?" Matteo gently pulled his arm free. "I'm not breaking rules. I'm helping them, that's all." "You're interfering," she hissed, "and you're making me look incompetent." Matteo didn't respond. His silence only infuriated her. But she noticed something then, a scar running down his wrist, pale and old. She grabbed it without thinking. "What's this? Self-inflicted? Accident? Medical?" Matteo yanked his hand back, expression shuddered. "That's none of your business." She stared at him. Really stared. "You're hiding something," she whispered. Matteo's jaw worked. He swallowed hard. "I've lost enough. I'm not losing them, too." Dr. Leora stiffened. "The twins are not your responsibility." But he didn't flinch. "They're not objects. They're children. They're people. They feel everything. They just don't know how to show it yet." For a moment, the doctor faltered. Just a moment. Then her face twisted. "I'm going to find out who you really are." She turned and marched away, heels clacking. Meanwhile, in the playroom, Ilara lifted Amina gently into her lap. The girl reached toward the toy on the table. A clear choice, a preference, another breakthrough. Noah rested his head against her arm, humming softly, experimenting with sound. Ilara felt her throat tighten. How is this happening? Every doctor she had obeyed, every therapist she had hired, every machine she had purchased, none of it made a dent. But this man, this janitor, the twins knew him, responded to him, trusted him.
and Ilara didn't understand why. She pressed a soft kiss to Noah's hair. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "what are you to him? Why do you shine when he walks in the room?" Noah blinked slowly, then lifted his hand. Not toward the toy, not toward Ilara, toward the door where Matteo had stood. Her heart tripped. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't luck. This wasn't an accident. And it certainly wasn't medical randomness. Matteo had a connection to her children, one she didn't understand yet. But she would. She had to. Because deep down, in the quiet place only mothers ever hear, something told her his presence was no miracle. It was a warning.
Storms never announce themselves. They build quietly, inside people, inside rooms, inside hearts, until something small, something seemingly harmless, becomes the final drop that spills everything. For Ilara, that final drop came on a gray Thursday morning. She arrived at the therapy wing early, clutching 2 new sensory toys she'd bought after reading late into the night. Her heart was light, hopeful even, because the twins had slept peacefully for the first time in months. But as she rounded the corner, she heard voices, raved, sharp, hurt. She froze behind the half-open door of the therapy room. Inside, Matteo stood against the wall, palms lifted in surrender, while Dr. Leora paced aggressively, fury radiating off her like heat. "You went through my files," Leora spat. "I didn't," Matteo said quietly. "You accessed restricted areas. I was mopping the hallway. You read patient charts. I can't even log into your system. You're manipulating those children." That one hit him. Hard. His shoulder stiffened, and for the first time since Ilara met him, his voice rose, raw, breaking. "I would never hurt them." "You already are," Leora shot back. "You're giving their mother false hope. You're confusing their neural pathways. You're making them dependent on a stranger, on a janitor who doesn't belong here." Silence. Scalding and thick. Matteo's chin trembled ever so slightly. "They're improving." "No," Leora snapped. "They're responding to you. That's not therapy. That's imprinting." Ilara felt something inside her chest crack. "Imprinting? On him? That's not fair," Matteo whispered. But Leora was relentless. "You think I haven't noticed the way they look at you? The way they reach for you?" She took a step forward, eyes wild. "Who are you? Why do children who barely respond to their own mother suddenly light up for you?" Matteo's breath hitched, and he said nothing. Not a word, not a defense, nothing. "Why won't you answer?" Ilara thought, gripping the doorframe so hard her nails dug into the wood. Why wouldn't he speak? Why wouldn't he deny it? Why wouldn't he tell the truth? Then Leora delivered the blow that shattered everything. "Did you come here because of them?" she demanded. "Are you some kind of obsessive, unstable—" "Stop!" His voice cracked. "Just stop. Tell me the truth," she insisted. "Why are you really here?" Matteo squeezed his eyes shut, face twisting with pain. "I can't." Those 2 words slammed into Ilara like a punch. He can't? He can't what? He can't answer? He can't tell the truth? He can't explain why her children responded to him like he was part of them? Before she had time to think, before she could stop herself, Ilara pushed the door fully open. Both of them spun toward her. Leora stiffened. Matteo paled. "Ilara," he began, but she held up a hand. "Don't," she whispered.
Her heart was pounding, her vision blurring, her entire body trembling with betrayal she didn't have words for. I heard everything. Matteo swallowed hard, eyes wide, pleading. It's not. Are you using my children? The question tasted like blood. His face crumpled. No, I swear. Then tell me who you are, she said, voice breaking. Tell me why they respond to you. Tell me why they reach for you. Tell me why my daughter smiled at you before she ever smiled at me. Matteo took a shaky step forward, then froze, because Noah, sweet, silent Noah, let out a sharp, distressed whimper from the corner, signaling pain and panic. His little hand curled and uncurled, searching blindly. Without thinking, Matteo rushed to him. And that was the breaking point for Ilara. Don't touch him! Her voice was ice. Matteo stopped like she'd slapped him. Ilara, he whispered, please. I trusted you. I let you near my children. I believed in you. And you can't even tell me who you are? His eyes glistened. I'm trying to protect them. From what? He hesitated, and Leora saw her victory. He's hiding something, the doctor said coldly. I've been warning you. Ilara turned on her like a storm. You knew something was wrong and you didn't tell me? Because I didn't have proof. You didn't need proof. You could have told me. I tried. No, you undermined him. You belittled him. You mocked him. If he really is dangerous, then you let him get this close to my children. That shut her up. Matteo looked like he was about to fall apart. Ilara, he whispered desperately, please don't shut me out. Not like this. Not before I explain. Her vision blurred with tears. Then explain. His chest heaved. I can't. Not yet. And that was it. The floor gave out. The air broke. The fragile world she'd built with him, with this strange, miraculous bond between him and her twins, it collapsed. Ilara's voice dropped to a whisper so cold, even Noah stilled. Get out. He flinched like the word itself cut him. Ilara, get out! He swallowed something sharp and painful, then nodded once, broken, defeated, and walked out of the room. He didn't look back. He couldn't, because if he had seen, he'd seen Ilara fall to her knees, pulling her twins into her arms as sobs tore through her. Dr. Leora stood stiffly in the corner, expression unreadable. And down the hall, Matteo stumbled into the supply closet, bracing himself against the shelves as silent tears finally escaped. He had lost them. Again. Night fell over the estate like a heavy curtain, thick, suffocating, restless. Ilara paced the nursery floor long after the twins had cried themselves to sleep. Her chest ached with every tiny sound they made, each soft whimper a reminder of how violently the day had fractured everything. She should feel safer now that Matteo was gone. She should feel relieved, but she didn't. She felt empty, like she'd ripped out something vital and left it bleeding on the floor. Amina twitched in her sleep. Noah whimpered, searching for comfort, and Ilara realized something that made her knees weaken. They weren't looking for her. They were looking for him. Her breath hitched, and she pressed her palms to her eyes. How did this happen? She whispered into the dark. How did I let someone in like that? How did they let someone in like that? Meanwhile, across the city, Matteo sat on the steps outside a run-down apartment complex, rain pooling at his feet. His hands shook as he dug out a worn, creased envelope from his jacket. Inside it was a photograph, a much younger him holding a tiny baby boy in his arms. A second baby lay in the crib behind him, small, fragile, hooked to machines. And standing beside the crib was a woman with tired eyes and a forced smile. His sister, his only family. He closed his eyes, remembering the day everything shattered, the day the hospital fire broke out, the day the alarms didn't go off in time, the day he'd tried, failed to save his nephews. One lived, one didn't. And the one who survived was locked inside a silent world that doctors said he'd never escape. Mateo swallowed hard as rain soaked the picture. He had made a promise that day over the tiny grave he'd dug with shaking hands. If I ever see a child like you, I won't walk away again. So when he'd seen Ilara's twins, fragile, locked inside their own bodies, misunderstood, he hadn't seen patience. He'd seen family. He'd seen a second chance. And now? Now the one woman who saw strength in him, who looked at him like he mattered, who watched her children bloom in his presence. She hated him. He couldn't blame her. He hadn't told her the truth. He hadn't told her he wasn't just a janitor. He hadn't told her he once was a neurodevelopment student before tragedy derailed his life. He hadn't told her he saw her children not as miracles, but as reminders of everything he'd lost. He pressed the wet photograph to his forehead. "I did the right thing," he whispered. But the words, they didn't feel true. Back at the estate, Ilara finally sat on the nursery floor, exhausted, staring at her silent phone. 1,000 instincts warred inside her. Fear, anger, hope, curiosity, longing she wasn't ready to name. She picked up her phone, put it down, picked it up again. "I shouldn't call him," she whispered. But another voice inside her, a quieter, braver voice, asked, "What if you're wrong about him? What if walking away now hurts the twins more than keeping him close? What if he's exactly what he says, someone who understands them in ways no doctor ever has?" Noah shifted in his crib, a soft whine escaping. Her heart broke. She'd never heard that sound before Mateo came into their lives, and now she didn't know how to soothe her own son without him. She picked up her phone again, and this time she didn't put it down. Her thumb hovered over Mateo's name. One touch, one call, one moment of vulnerability. But fear paralyzed her. Instead, she typed a message. "What aren't you telling me?" She stared at it, deleted it, typed again. "Why can't you explain?" Deleted. Finally, her shoulders sagged, and she typed the simplest, most honest question of all. "Did you lie to me?" Her thumb trembled. Send. She exhaled, hands shaking. Seconds passed, then minutes, then... Her phone buzzed. One message. From Mateo. Her heart slammed. She opened it. "I never lied to you, but I should have told you the truth. Please, meet me tomorrow. If you walk away after that, I'll respect it." Ilara closed her eyes, tears blurring the screen. He wasn't begging. He wasn't defending himself. He wasn't making excuses. He was offering her a choice, a real one, the kind only someone with nothing left to lose could offer. The next morning, Mateo waited at the small wooden bridge behind the estate, clothes damp from the dew, nerves stretched tight. He didn't know if she would come. He didn't expect her to. But when he heard soft footsteps on the gravel path, he turned. Ilara stood there, hair tied back, eyes tired but burning with something fierce. Not anger, not fear, determination. She approached slowly, stopping a few feet away. "Before you say anything," she said softly, "I need to know the truth." Matteo nodded, throat tight. "I'll tell you everything. And after I hear it," she whispered, "I'll decide if you ever see my children again." Matteo inhaled shakily. "That's fair." The air thickened. This was the moment, the razor's edge, the choice. Ilara's voice wavered. "Tell me who you are and why my twins mean so much to you." Matteo finally lifted his eyes, and he told her everything, slowly, painfully, honestly. As he spoke, Ilara felt the truth settle over her like a weight, but not the crushing one she expected, more like a puzzle piece sliding into place. By the end, her hands were trembling. So were his. Silence hung between them, fragile as glass. "Ilara," he whispered, "I didn't want to hurt you. I just didn't want to fail them the way I failed before." Her breath broke. He bowed his head. "If you want me gone forever, say it. I'll leave right now." Ilara stared at him. This man who had brought her twins back to life in ways science couldn't explain. This man who had carried grief so heavy it shaped him. This man who had nothing and still gave the twins everything. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I don't want you gone." Matteo stiffened. She took one trembling step toward him. "But I don't know how to trust you yet." Matteo's eyes softened, not with hope, but with understanding. "I'll earn it, however long it takes." And for the first time since their world fractured, Ilara believed him.
Morning sunlight spilled gently through the therapy room windows, painting soft gold across the quiet space. The twins lay on their playmats, calm for once, their tiny fingers tracing the textures of the new sensory toys Ilara had bought. Today felt different, lighter, like the air itself knew a chapter was ending and a new one was waiting to unfold. Ilara stood by the doorway, heart steady but full, because today, after everything, Matteo was coming back. Not as a janitor, not as a stranger, not as a secret, but as himself. The truth had changed everything. Her anger had dissolved into understanding, her fear into clarity, her uncertainty into something soft, dangerous, beautiful. And now, she was ready to see what came next. The door opened quietly. Matteo stepped inside, freshly shaved, hair brushed, no janitor uniform, just a simple, clean shirt and nervous eyes. He looked younger, lighter, like telling the truth had unclenched something inside him. He froze when he saw the twins. Amina noticed him first. Her little eyes widened. Her hands lifted from the toy, hesitant, searching. Then Noah made a soft humming sound, his earliest version of a laugh. Matteo pressed his hand to his mouth, overwhelmed. "Can I?" he breathed. Ilara nodded. "Go to them." He did, slowly, gently, reverently, like they were pieces of his heart he wasn't sure he deserved to touch again. Amina reached for him fully this time, no hesitation, no confusion. Her fingers wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength. Noah grabbed his sleeve, pulling softly, as if asking, "Where did you go?" Matteo let out a sob between a sob and a laugh. "I missed you," he whispered, voice shaking. The twins responded, not with words, not with signs, but with connection. Pure, instinctive connection. Ilara felt her throat tighten. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't therapy. This wasn't imprinting or manipulation or confusion. This was love, recognition, safe familiarity, something soul deep, something rare, something she didn't want to break again. A small bell lay near Noah, a therapy tool for motor coordination. Matteo lifted it slowly, giving Noah a moment to anticipate the sound. Noah watched the bell intently. Matteo rang the bell. The soft chime filled the room, and then, in the smallest, quietest miracle, Noah lifted his hand, not randomly, not reflexively, purposefully. He touched the bell. Matteo froze. Ilara gasped softly. "Do it again," she whispered. Matteo rang the bell a second time. Noah lifted his hand again, faster this time, and tapped Matteo's wrist. Not just movement, not just response. Initiation, intent, communication, a milestone none of their doctors believed would ever come. Matteo's eyes filled with tears. "Good job, Noah," he whispered, voice breaking. "You did it. You really did it." Amina, not wanting to be left behind, reached up too, her tiny palm pressing against Matteo's cheek. Ilara covered her mouth with her hand. They weren't just progressing. They were choosing him. Again. And again. And again. And Ilara was finally ready to choose too. Later, when the twins were napping, Ilara walked with Matteo into the garden behind the estate. Autumn leaves crackled under their feet. The fountain murmured softly. The air felt warm despite the season. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You don't have to." "Yes," she interrupted gently. "I do." Matteo looked away, overwhelmed. "Everything you told me yesterday, about the fire, about your nephews. Matteo, why didn't you tell me sooner?" He swallowed hard. "Because I didn't want you to look at me and see failure." Ilara stepped closer, her voice soft but unwavering. "I don't see failure." He blinked rapidly. "I see a man who carries more love in his scars than most people carry in their whole lives." Matteo's breath shuddered. "Ilara, you didn't fail your family. You survived something unbearable. And instead of shutting down, you gave my children more tenderness than anyone else ever has." He finally met his eyes. "Do you really believe that?" She nodded. "With my whole heart." For a moment, they simply stood there, silent, raw, changed. Then Matteo spoke, voice trembling. "I don't want to replace you. I don't want to take your place. I want to help them. However you allow me, however you trust me, whether that's a volunteer, a therapist, a part of their lives." He stilled. "Yes," he whispered. "If you'll let me." Ilara reached out and took his hand, slowly, gently, deliberately. "I want you in our lives," she corrected softly. "All of us." Matteo inhaled sharply. "Ilara, are you sure? After everything?" She smiled, a real, hopeful, luminous smile. "You didn't break us, Matteo. You brought us back to life." His eyes filled with tears, and this time, he didn't hide them. A soft sound echoed from the therapy room, a sound Ilara recognized instantly. A giggle, then another. She and Matteo rushed inside and froze. Noah was playing. Not just watching, not just responding, playing. He shook the bell, laughing at the sound. Amina clapped her tiny hands. And then Noah lifted the bell toward the door. Not toward the toy box, not toward Ilara, toward Matteo. A full, intentional gesture. The moment that changed everything. But this time, it was choice. It was connection. It was love. Matteo kneeled in front of them, shaking and smiling and crying all at once. Ilara kneeled beside him, her hand slipping into his. Their twins between them. Their future unfolding. He whispered, "We'll do this together." Ilara's voice was steady, certain, warm. "We're all ready."
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.